Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches, Nedarim, Daf Zayin, and we're starting on the top line of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. We've been discussing the scope of a yad for a neder. A yad for a neder, to review for the 30th time, I don't know, is a slightly removed language, an indirect language about a neder, and whether or not that rule that we know that applies by Nedarim and Nazirus, whether it applies by other areas as well. And yesterday, we discussed a couple of those different areas, and the Gemara today is going to continue in that conversation. The Gemara asks on the top of Zayin Amud Aleph on the top line, Yesh yad l'tzedakah, o ein yad l'tzedakah. When it comes to making commitments for tzedakah, do we say that a language of a yad is meaningful language? Does it actually function as a commitment of money to tzedakah? So says the Gemara, hey chidami, that depends. What's the case? Ilema de Amar, if a person were to say, quote, Hadein zuz l'tzedakah, this money in my right hand is l'tzedakah, the Hadein nami, and this too, if that's what we say, that's crystal clear. Hahut tzedakah atzmahi, that's the same exact, both phrases are the same, right? They're very similar. So says the Gemara, that can't be the case where we're asking our question about whether or not a yad works for tzedakah. Ella, says the Gemara, 4 lines down, Kegon de Amar Hadein velo Amar Nami. In regards to the second part of his phrase, he only said, and this. So in his right hand, he had money, and he said, all of this money is going to tzedakah. And then in his left hand, he put out his left hand and said, Hadein, this. He didn't say this also, he just said this. Velo Amar Nami. He didn't say this also, because when you say also tethers back to the previous part of the comment. But it could be like this, maybe something else, right? So we don't know what this means. That's the Gemara's question. What would we say? Do we say that Hadein, that when we say the second phrase of Hadein Nami tzedakah, that it's also going to be tzedakah ka'amar? O Dilma, or perhaps my the Hadein, what does it mean when he says this? That's really lenafkusa be'alma ka'amar. It's about spending in general. I'm going to use this money to go to Jewel. I'm going to use this money to buy Romanian. V'diburo hu delo aske, but he never finished his sentence. So when you don't say the word also, which tethers us back to the previous comment, which was crystal clear, so that's what the Gemara is debating. And the Gemara says 6-7 lines down, Mi amrinan, do we say that kevan de iskash lekorbanos, since the world of tzedakah has a comparison to the world of korbanos, and since by the world of korbanos we know that a yad functions and can be mechayev someone in a yad, like we saw yesterday, harezu chatasi, harezu ashami, maybe we should say over here by tzedakah too. And how do we know that there's a hekesh? Because the pasuk says beficha, the pasuk here in full reads, when the pasuk says beficha, says the Gemara, zu tzedakah. And maybe we should have made the following comparison. Ma korbanos yesh lahen yad, just like when it comes to the world of korbanos, we know that the rules of yad apply. Af tzedakah yesh la yad. Would we say that the applicability of yad carries from korbanos over to tzedakah? O Dilma, or perhaps maybe we would say a little bit differently. Maybe lebal ta'acher hu de'is kashim. Maybe the only thing that's going over the bridge in the hekesh between tzedakah and the world of korbanos is the isser of bal ta'acher, but maybe nothing more than that. And that is the Gemara's question. We don't have an answer presented here. The Ran does go through the psak in each of the various cases over yesterday's and today's Gemara. Some are l'chumra, some are l'kula. The Gemara says a third of the way down. Let's ask the question again. Do we say yesh yad lehefker, o dilma ein yad lehefker? When I am setting something as hefker, do we say that that when I say my phrase of hefker, this is now hefker? Great. And if I then add and this too, would that work? Does a yad work by the world of hefker? So the Gemara says, Hainu tzedakah, ma'inaf kamina, should be the same exact thing. You're taking coins, you're taking something that's worth money, and you're giving it away to something else. Why would we ask any different? Says the Gemara, im tim salomar kamar. It's coming to tell us in im tim salomar, if this, then that. What does that mean? Says the Gemara 5 lines before the wide lines. Im tim salomar yesh yad letzedakah. You might say that there is a yad for tzedakah, the ein hekesh lemechza, because the mechza, the hekesh, between tzedakah and korbanos, it's not a bridge that has a one-way valve on it. Everything goes over the bridge. So if you're going to say that we have a comparison for Baal Ta'acher, you also should learn from korbanos to tzedakah about a yad. Hefker mi amrinan, Would we say Hainu tzedakah or Dilma, or perhaps shiny tzedakah? Maybe tzedakah is actually different than hefker. And listen to the Gemara's distinction as to why tzedakah should be different than hefker. The tzedakah lo chazia elo le'anim. Tzedakah is only useful for someone who needs tzedakah. Nobody likes taking handouts. If you're making enough money to not take a handout, you're not taking a handout. And if you need money, and even then, some people don't take handouts. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do, to be that vulnerable. So maybe we would say that by tzedakah, where it's lo chazi elo la'aniyim, maybe we'd say that the halacha would be different there by tzedakah than aval behefker, bein la'aniyim, bein la'ashirim. So the Gemara again doesn't have an answer. We've asked two questions and left them unanswered. Do we say that there's a yad that applies to the world of tzedakah, and do we say that there's a yad that applies to the world of hefker? And to that we don't know the answer. Then the Gemara says, "By Ravina, yesh yad lebeis hakise olo." In regards to establishing that a room will be a bathroom, but it's not yet a bathroom. If I appoint that room, this will be my bathroom, architectural plans, and they build the frame of the house. They didn't have architectural plans, I presume, back in the day, not the way we do. Architectural plans may not be very much, but once we build the space that will be the bathroom, even though it's never been used as a bathroom, and even though there's no tsoa, and it's mamish not a bathroom, but would there be such a thing where by simply calling that place a bathroom, does that make it into a bathroom? Says the Gemara, do we say, Boy Ravina, yesh yad lebeis hakise olo? And the Gemara asks 2/3 of the way down on the first long line, hey chidami, what's the case? Ilema de Amar, if the person said, Hadein Besa, this room, it literally means house, but in the context, this house, Lehabe Besa Kisa, remember their bathrooms were outdoors, they were like an outhouse, literally. So that's, okay, so the room that they're setting aside as a Besa Kise, the Hadein Nami. I say that this fixture over here, this building, that's my 5x5 shack, that's going to be a bathroom. And the other 5x5 shack, the Hadein Nami, says the Gemara, if that's the language, then Hahu Besa Kise Nami Habit, then the language is perfect. This is a bathroom, and this also, remembering that the word also or nami hooks back into the first sentence. When you say also, sometimes we've seen Mishnayos that start with the word v'chein, and the Gemara will say, my v'chein, what do you, so when you say nami, it's very clear that your second comment is the same as your first comment. So that can't be it. Ella says the Gemara, Kigon, it must be the Amar v'hadein. Yes, he properly established building number 1 to be a bathroom, and building number 2, he just pointed and said, and this. But velo amar nami, he didn't say this also, so we don't have that word that brings us back from the second comment to the first. That's the Gemara's question. What's the halacha? Do we say?
No, the contractor says, "What do you want in the bathroom?" He says, "I want that to be a bathroom and this." I didn't say this one too, but
you're correct, but he's not answering a question. If you look at the Gemara says, "Ilema de Omar," he says, "Hadein besa lehabe besa kise." He says this room is going. He's not answering a question. We'll see a raya for what I'm saying in the Gemara in a little bit. That's not the case. So then the Gemara says, what third line of the wide lines? What would the halacha be? Do we say Hadein de Amar when he only said the word Hadein? The Hadein that he said is v'Hadein nami beis hakisei. Maybe it really does mean the same thing. A little bit like Stan is saying. It's kind of the context seems pretty clear as to what's going on. Odilma, perhaps no, my v'hadein. When he said v'hadein, what does it mean? The tashmisha ve'alma ka'amar. So this is my bathroom, and this, without finishing a sentence, is for something else. Again, we're really harping heavily on the word nami here also, because that is what makes it very clear. Now, we don't have an answer to this question, but the Gemara brings up a fascinating point. Lemaisa, are we allowed to daven in that room? There's construction on the corner of my block. They know where the bathroom is. It's already been framed out with wood. Can I stand in there and say Shema? Can I stand in there and put on tefillin?
why not?
Says the Gemara. But this is before anyone's ever used it anyways. Here we're in the assigning stage. So if I know that the back left corner of this house is meant to be a bathroom, that's what it is on the architectural plans, and then they build the frame. According to our Gemara, you cannot say Shema there. You can't wear tefillin, nothing. It's a place that you're not. Any rules, any bathroom rules, whatever it is.
Even though there's no.
Michlal says the Gemara, what's implied from here?
We don't in bathrooms, but.
Our bathrooms are not, right? That was your distinction from before, but this is even less than that. This isn't, there's no toilet in there yet. Zimun, the Gemara is going to call it Zimun.
No one's building.
I was driving around with Mordechai Willig once, and the only place to wash Netilas Yadayim was in a bathroom. So he said, no problem. I'm happy to wash my hands in a bathroom. And he did. Because our bathrooms are what are referred to in halacha as beis hakisei shel parsiim. The Persians were one of the first people that wasn't really full plumbing, but what they did is they dug a hole under the pit where you'd go to the bathroom, and it had a curve under it. So when they would go to the bathroom, all the tzoa would find its way to the bottom in a way where where it wasn't directly visible, and that limits and minimizes the direct exposure to tzoa, which really makes it that it's not so bad to say a bracha in a bathroom. Really, even the urinals, our bathrooms, sometimes they smell bad if you don't take care of them, but if you got the urinal cakes in there, you do it the right way, it doesn't smell so bad. Urinal cakes don't smell good, by the way, just FYI. So you should probably find another solution.
They dry their hands out.
Who's they? Are you talking about Netilas Yadayim for Hamotzi? Or are you talking about Asher Yotzar? Oh, I've never heard that. For Hamotzi, I've heard that because the Ramon Shulchan Aruch speaks about the fact that drying your hands is part of the Netilas Yadayim. You have to make the bracha when your hands are wet. That's it.
Make your bracha before.
So if you're making,
We don't make bracha in the bathroom.
correct,
But we.
probably, especially if there are stalls. Oh,
We don't.
Yeah.
Because
Because we're from. It also, the bathroom can smell also. That is a problem too. If you're next to a garbage can and it smells terrible, you also shouldn't daven. So there's really multiple issues. But the tzoa issue per se is really not a big issue. What? Same. Anything, any religious activity that would otherwise be prohibited in a bathroom, really our bathrooms are not so bad. So in Ater Sayala, I don't know if you noticed this, in the bathrooms in Ater Sayala, they have a totally different room for the sinks. That's mamish mutter lechatchila to make a bracha in that room. Pashut, that's for sure. It's a totally different room. Nothing to even talk about. But they're also from, and they didn't want to put a sink in the hallway, so they closed off. I didn't ask them. I presume I'm postulating it could be. Okay, so it says the Gemara. Here's what we inferred from Ravina. Nichlal, fourth line. It seems to pshita leila Ravina that it's obvious to him the yesh zimun the beis hakise, that we can do what's called zimun for a beis hakise. Zimun is effectively appointing that this in due time will be a bathroom. So when the house is all framed out, and I know where the bathroom is, and there's even a hole in the floor to take the pipe that will be the pipe for tzoa, but no one's ever used it to go to the bathroom. It seems from Ravina that room has a din of a beis hakise. And the Gemara says, how can that be? V'hamibaya le Ravina. This actually, in another place in Shas, was actually a question that he asked. This is found in a couple of places in Shas. You can see on the side, Brachos and Shabbos. He's minu lebeis hakise mahu. What is the din if we set aside a room to be a beis hakise? Do we say that it's a bathroom or not? And similarly, he's minu lebeis hamerchatz mahu. What if we establish a place as a bathhouse? A bathhouse has a couple of strikes against it also, but primarily people are not dressed in a bathhouse. So Pashut, you can't make a bracha lifnei erva, even in front of a male erva. That's why the whole Hasidish gartel and the Litvaks rely on the underwear band or a belt or something to separate to be mafsik ben libo erva. Fascinatingly, women don't have a din of being mafsik ben libo erva because the anatomy is such that when one is standing up, it's not visible. So it's a different. The Gemara discusses this elsewhere, I think. Anyways. What about his minul beis hamerchatz? Do we say, says the Gemara, zimun moel, or ein zimun moel? So this kasha is a kasha in Ravina. Ravina, in our Gemara, you presented in a way where it seemed pashut to you that there is zimun by a bathroom and by a beis hamerchatz. But you yourself, in Maseches Brachos and Maseches Shabbos, framed it as a question. The Gemara responds, Ravina, chada migo chada kami boile. Do we see this language in Shas? Pretty unique. Chada migo chada, one question within another. What does that mean? Zimun moil o ein zimun moil. Question one is whether or not zimun is effective for establishing this framed out room to actually be a bathroom. And im tim salomar yesh zimun. And if you want to say that that zimun does work, yesh yad o ein yad. That was Ravina's question from above. Do we say that there's a yad for a bathroom? So it's a double question. That's how we can clarify Ravina to make sure the Gemara is clear. And the Gemara responds with a phrase that we're not used to. Says the Gemara, Tiboile. Look at the Hagos Habach in Os Katan Aleph. The Hagos Habach writes, Rav Yoel Circus, he writes, Tiboile, Nir Betzido Tosfos Pirush Kemo Teku. This is the Nedarim language for Teku, is Tiboile. Let his question be a question, in effect. It's again, I don't know what the difference is. Is there nafkamina? Is it just lexicon? I don't know. That's what the Gemara says.
a little, more tongue in cheek than Teku.
Yeah, I mean, Teku is like this, like built-in Elio and Navi, religious.
Around this, it's like, I think you have a question, so you have a question.
By the way, the Gemara, the Rishonim are mechalik. The Gemara is mechalik between a Teku and a kasha, for example. By a Teku, we mamish don't know a kasha. There are answers that are, so those are answerable. So I would ask in Lumdus, are you really right or are you not right? Do we say Tibayle is like a Teku? Or is Tibayle like the Hagos Habach is saying? Or do we say no, Tibayle is like a kasha, and as long as you have a Yiddish cup, you can find a response? Don't know. And the Ran here seemingly seems like you're saying, because the Ran and Paskins in all of these cases. The Ran gives a psak in all these. Okay, let's continue. We had said at the end of our Mishnah on Daf Beis that Menuda anilach, this strange language of Menuda. And the first thing we need to do is question what the word Menuda means. We're familiar with the word Menuda as in regards to Nidui, which is like a nida also, that she's separated. And here too, that nidui, we put this person excommunicado, you're out. So we have to define the word first. But we had said in our Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva was of the opinion, remember the strange language? Chochech lahachmir. That was the language in the Mishnah. If you flip back to Daf Beis, that was the end of our Mishnah. Last two words on Beis and Aleph. Rabbi Akiva haya chochech bazel lahachmir. He was hesitant. He wasn't 100% sure. He debated, and therefore he wasn't sure. So says the Gemara, making an inference from the lack of clarity that Rabbi Akiva had. And I would also add, this is probably the first time in Shas we've seen Rabbi Akiva teeter. It's a very uncommon. Rabbi Akiva is not, we don't see Tanaim teetering a lot anyways. They don't usually give chumras and kulas. It's usually, this is the din. And the Gemara will say, but here the Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva wasn't sure. And based on his lack of clarity, the Gemara says, Amar Abaye Moda Rabbi Akiva Inyan Malkos, that if a person said Menuda Anilach and then he violated that neder, would he get Malkos? Says the Gemara, he would not. She'eno loke, because the im came Nisni Rabbi Akiva Machmir. He should have said that Rabbi Akiva is Machmir, but the Chochech Lahachmir, when you have this degree of suffix and you're debating internally, do we say that this is really a violation of a neder, yes or no? There, because we're unsure, because Rabbi Akiva's presentation in our Mishnah is unsure, therefore we would not allow for Malkos to take place. Amar Rav Papa, we need to get into the language. Our Mishnah said Menuda, and Rav Papa qualifies where this discussion takes place. Amar Rav Papa be Nedina, a different language, and here this language of Nedina is, the Rishonim write, a lashon neder. Be Medina minach, there dekule amalo pligi de aser. That's mamish a neder, and in fact there you would be chayiv malkos. That language is too strong. And mishamtana minach, I mean, I am excommunicating you. Well, being mishamet someone is not a neder. It's excommunicado. You're out, but it doesn't mean that you violated a neder. There, the kule al mashari. Everyone agrees that that's fine. But my pligi, where do we have this hesitation from Rabbi Akiva? As we turn to the top of Zayin Amud Beis, and we'll learn to the last line of this page, says the Gemara b'menuda anilach, the language of our Mishnah. The Rabbi Akiva savar. Rabbi Akiva was of the opinion lishna de niduyahi. It's a language of niduya, which we saw in the previous page as a lashon neder. V'rabbanan sabre lishna de mishmasnahi. It's a language of cherem. It's a language of excommunication, which has nothing to do with Nedarim directly. However, this machlokas between the Tanakam and Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah on Daf Beis is subject to a machlokas, meaning we don't know what their machlokas is about. What we just said is version 1 of how to understand the Tanakam and Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva says that the language of Menuda is similar to Niduya, and the Chachamim said no, it's similar to Cherem. Upliga de Rav Chizda, who understood the machlokas differently. Let's see how Rav Chizda saw that. Ta'ahu Gavra, there was a man. To Amar, he had said the following phrase: Mishmasna benichse de brei de Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. There's a cherem on the properties as it relates to the son of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. And also Lakame de Rav Chizda, they brought it to him. And Omar Lei, this case was definitely a case of Mishasna. And what did he say? Leis techash la lahad Rabbi Akiva. Nobody agrees with Rabbi Akiva. But here we know exactly what language was used. It was the language of Mishasna, the language of Shamta. And what do we say? That in that case, Rabbi Akiva was Machmir, he was Chochech Bazel Lahachmir. And what does the Gemara say about Rav Chizda? We don't paskin like Rabbi Akiva, which means that Rabbi Akiva's opinion was even in regards to a language of Shamta, which shows us that Rav Chizda had a different understanding of our machlokas than the Gemara's initial presentation. Kasavar, he seems to hold b'mashmasna pligi, that the argument of Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanon is in the language of Shamta. Okay, let's discuss a couple cases that are related but not exactly the same. Amar Rabbi Ila, Amar Rav, Nidahu b'fanav. If a person had a nidui done in front of him, ein matir lo ela b'fanav, and you want to be matir that neder, he has to be in front of you. Can't again if you made the neder with him in the room, you can only be matir the neder that way. Nidahu shelo b'fanav, matirin lo bein b'fanav bein shelo b'fanav. If you made a neder about a person and he wasn't in your presence, so then you can be matir neder anywhere. Next in. Says the Gemara, Amarav Chanan Amarav, Hashomea Haskaras Hashem mipi chavero, tzarich lenadoso. If a person has a Haskaras Hashem, he says Hashem's name. We have to give parameters to Hashem's name here. It really depends on what we're talking about. Is it Yud Kei Vav Kei? Is it the Shem of Adnos? Is it the 72-letter name? I don't know. I have no idea. Says the Ran, about 10 lines down. That mafkinan azhara lemazkir shem shamayim levatala midichsibes Hashem elokecha tira. So there's a proper isur doraisa to say Hashem's name. I don't think this is regular bracha levatala, but I guess I could see how that would work out. There's a general machlokes about bracha levatala, and most Ashkenazim are of the opinion that if a person says a shahakol out of the blue, that's an isur derabbanan. However, if you are of Sephardic descent, they actually hold that that's an isur doraisa, and according to some, it's even rooted in the 10 Commandments. Very, very strong Marimakom. The question is, how do we define that? And what is this as well? Also fits into this discussion. Not clear from the Ran one way or the other. But says the Gemara, almost halfway down on Zayin Amud Beis, that if you hear your friend being Mazkir Shem Shamayim, you have to put him in Nidui. And if you heard it and you did not, you're the bystander, you heard it. V'im lo nidahu, if you don't put him in Nidui, then hu atzmo yehi b'nidui. You, the bystander, you're guilty. You have to stand up for Kvod Shamayim. You have to make sure that you're doing what's right. Shekol makom she'azkaras Hashem mitzuya. Any time that a Kodesh Baruch Hu's name is used when it should not be used, sham anius mitzuya. Whenever that happens, poverty strikes down when Hashem's name is used incorrectly. The anius kimisa. This we've seen throughout Shas a couple of times, that being poor has been compared to death. Shne'emar, how do we know that? Ki mesu kol ha'anashim. What does that pasuk mean? V'tanya kol makom shenasnu chachamim meneihem. That wherever the chachamim put their eyes, o misa o oni. And we need to spend time on this drasha, but we're not going to understand it fully. But the point is that that person, we have a din. If we're a listener, we have a din that we have to put that person into nidui if they are mazkir shem shamayim. Last short line. Amar Rabbi Abba, Havakaimna kame de Rav Huna. I was standing in front of Rav Huna. Shama lahach itza. I heard the voice of a woman. The avka has kars Hashem levatala, and we heard that the avka left her mouth the Shem Hashem levatala. She said what she shouldn't have said. She said one of the shemos of Hashem, Shamta, and he put her into cherem. V'shara lo la'alter ba'apa. And after the cherem was done, he undid the cherem right away. Slap on the wrist. A little bit of a short consequence. Says the Gemara, Shmami not las. From this little story, we can learn 3 things about the halachos of a woman being mazkir shem shamayim levatala. Number 1, Shmamina hashamea hazkaras Hashem mipi chaver tzarich lenadoso. A verification and validation of the Gemara we saw just a few lines ago, that when a person hears hazkaras shem shamayim mipi chavero tzarich lenadoso, they have to put him into nidui. V'shmamina nidahu b'fanav. And also we see that if one is nidahu b'fanav, ein matir lo ela b'fanav, he was the only one, or I should say, she would have to be removed from her cherem in front of him, right? They have to be in the same room. Same Gemara we also learned. So this is also a validation of what we learned earlier. And lastly, ushma mina ein bein nidui lahafar v'lo klum. It's okay if the time between the nidui and the removal of the nidui is simply momentary. That was what we just saw. He gave her the slap on the wrist and she moved on. She understood. We're going to put you in cherem. And then right when he was done, he was matir her from her cherem. So again, what exactly was accomplished? Is it a fear tactic? I don't know. We need to be shown him here and need to spend some time on it. Next, last one for the night. Amar Rav Gidel Amar Rav. Talmud Chacham menadeh la'atzmo umefer la'atzmo. A Talmud Chacham can put himself into nidui and can take himself out of nidui. Says the Gemara, shouldn't that just be pashut? What would be the restriction of him removing his own nidui pshita? Says the Gemara, no. Mahu de tema ein chavush matir atzmo mi beiso asurin. This is not just a catchphrase; it's a halachic phrase that when a person is chavush, when a person is imprisoned, then he cannot be matir himself from the beiso asurim, which of course doesn't mean prison. It means that if you trap yourself in a halachic scenario, you cannot then be the one to remove yourself from that trap. That's what it means when the Gemara says Ein chavush matir atzmo beis Hashem. Kamash malan, that that's not true. That when it comes to nidui, a person can self-impose nidui and remove themselves from the nidui, no problem.
There's another pattern that is like, whoever you put into Shanta, you put himself first.
That is the next line of the Gemara. Literally the next line of the Gemara. Hechidami, like Stan said, Ki hadamar zutra chasida. Ki mechayev bar bei rav shamta. When the beis medrash, the bei rav, when they would put someone into shamta, into excommunication, mashmis nafshe beresha. He would first put himself into nidui. The hadar mishames bar bei rav. And then he would put the other person into nidui. And then he would undo his own nidui and then undo the nidui of the other person. We'll stop right here. Tomorrow night we'll pick up again with Amar Rav Gidal, another halachic case scenario. Wishing you all a beautiful night.